Ward 5 for the invocation.
Let us pray. Most holy and all-wise God, let's again that we come, Lord God. And Father God, we thank you for this day. We thank you that you've been so kind and merciful to us, dear God. You allowed us to see this day. And we can't help from thinking about the Boston bombing. And Father God, we ask that you would be with those people, all of them, keep them in your care, dear God, all over this land and country. And Father God, as we attempt to carry out the business for this great city, we ask that you would direct us, lead us, that we may make the right decisions for your people, dear God. And we ask in this in your mighty Son's Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor Johnson Ashburn could not be here tonight, so I'm filling in for her. It's time for citizens' time. The first one on the list is Herman Parker at 303 North High Street.
Ladies and gentlemen, it just so happened I was at a person's house this week, got his house inspected, 612 North High Street. The man, I'm not going to hold back names, was Walker Cobb. And first thing I asked him was, out of curiosity, was he certified? He said, no, just experienced. I've got the piece of paper here stating that. And he said that the lights weren't being read by the meters, but by the usage. And I found that to be quite unusual, because why do we have meters if you're not going to read them? You know, so we went tit for tat for a little while, arguing over the situation. He was sent a piece of paper. Who do I present this to?
To the city manager or to the city attorney.
Stating basically that something was said that signed paperwork for him, that he had done the proper job, and there would be a $200 deduction off his light bill. Now, I don't know how true that was, but that was what was told to the worker, the city worker. That kind of bothered me, because you just can't take something off without having exact figures here. Now, we still owe $76, where it normally takes us one time to pay a light bill. All of a sudden, the news media and everything else has gotten into this, and things are starting to go down. That's funny, because to me, all of a sudden, when we get the news and stuff involved, it's a different story. And yes, Mr. Cheatham, I want you to know, I appreciate you calling us a circus, maybe because you didn't understand it's what it seemed like to you.
We are not going to address any individual, be it me or anybody else up here. If you do, you're welcome to sit back down.
Okay.
Understood?
Well, I got my point across.
You understand? And it was a media circus.
Well, you can call us names, but we can't call you names.
I just said it was. I didn't call you a name.
Well, I'm
You
not
can use
saying
general
I can call you
terms.
one, I give my opinion.
You can use general terms, and that's where it stands.
All right, but stick
Is
with
that
general
understood?
curve, because I say I'm getting generally mad. So, anyway, we got that straight. But another thing is, when you criticize other people, I'm not throwing discretions, I'm stating fact. When you throw curbs at other people that's on the council because they don't agree with you to make yourself look good, that's not good for the people. Because technically, it's the council that controls. It's the council that controls what goes on. And the council can stop this highlight bill. And that's what hurts. And this is a compliment, Mr. Burgess, because I like what you said. In the paper, you stated that you thought Dominion might be our source. You wanted a way for the people. I like that, because that showed that you did care too. But I just can't understand why all of a sudden y'all get elected, it's like y'all own Franklin. And that's not the case. The people, the taxpayer, the hard workers, the people I see are hard workers. And they're out there and they believe in this town. I grew up in this town almost 50 years. And I'm not going to let somebody come in and tell me what I can do and what I can't do as long as it's within the law. This is getting outside the law. Now, we got to make some changes. Election's coming. And don't look very good for the home team. And I've only seen 3 people, when he can't be here, that actually care for this town.
That's 5 minutes.
Your time's up.
Huh?
Your time is up.
Yeah, I think I had time.
Next one is John Reddick with Southampton Meadows.
I just don't understand. If I like bill every month, ain't nobody there but me. It want $500 a month. Don't like it. I mean, I don't leave nothing on. I cut everything off when I leave, and for the month get here, I get another light bill. The same thing. I remember when it was $50, $60. But I don't understand how they got that high. I don't understand it. And that's going on and on and on. I just can't afford to pay it. Take everything I got just to pay that light bill.
Have you gone by to see the city manager and turn in your bill to him?
No.
Okay.
I come out here and tell them about it. Nobody don't give me an answer. Say the same thing. Other people like do the same thing, so I can't understand. I mean, you know, everybody got the same problem, so it's got to be a problem somewhere. I don't understand it. Every month it's the same thing. Look like I'm just paying over and over and over. I just can't get ahead like that. That's all I gotta say.
Okay, thank you. Darnell Evans of 31330 Darden Street.
First, I want to say good evening to the panel. And it's just like Mr. Reddy said, we don't understand what's going on. We don't even know who our representative is for Southampton County. And we just like to know why in 1 month you be on the low, next month, bam, you up in there. Day before yesterday, my fiancée and I was sitting in the house, watching TV. Bleep. Man pull up there, cut it. And she's the only one working in the household. I'm not here trying to find work. I come up here looking for work. They tell me jobs that day I can't do. How do you know I can't do it? I'm healthy. I got limbs. I can move, I can bend. But how can we afford to pay light bill every month? You get a double light bill on you. And you trying to eat, trying to pay other bills. And then you got a high sky light bill that you can't pay, and they think, you know, they come out there, do y'all like sleeping in a house in a cold house? Do y'all like sleeping in your clothes in the bed to try to stay warm? I guarantee you, And one of y'all like to be happy. Y'all won't get cut off. And I'm not being smart saying that to y'all. We need help. And we need y'all to help us out there in South America. Because it doesn't make any sense. You get a high bill, $400-500. How you know your bill that high if nobody ain't reading the meter? Come on, man. Be for real. I'm for real. I'm an unemployed person. I've been out here every day trying to find work. Bam, just shut it door. How can I help my fiance pay bills when I ain't got no work? And y'all got work out around here, Frank, that people can do. Put them to work. How? See what they can do. I'll be 55 years old in this year. I want to work till I get to my age to retire, that I can sit down. But I'm not going to sit down. I'm going to still work. But we can't work, can't pay bills, we can't work. And South Matter is the main source. We need our representative to come here and sit up there and speak for us. To lower the bills down that we can afford. I understand y'all got the power. But the power is up to y'all to help us. And help these people too. Because these people out here struggling like everybody else. Just like y'all. Y'all can pay y'all bill. But we can't. When the bill comes, we put so much on it, they let them stay on. Next week, put so much on it, they stay on. Next week, when you can't pay nothing, come on. Come on. You sitting in the house in the dark, in the cold. I've been sitting in my house 3 nights in a row, in the cold. Cool nights like this. Trying to stay warm. I had to take my food to my cousin's house. Y'all not gonna pay for our food being spoiled. What can we do? What we supposed to do? We need y'all help. Lower these bills down so we can afford. Help us to help y'all. Thank you very much.
Sabrina Wellington, 908 Walnut Street.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I'm here to speak on the citizens and myself. As we came here for relief. We want to see whether if y'all can help us with any kind of assistance, any emergency funds or anything. These people cannot live the way they are living today and carry on to the next bill to the next month. Social service won't get no assistance to June. So these people still standing here trying to get help with y'all. We're not getting a response. No letters is being written back to us. Being concerned as our council members, y'all should give us answers. Tell us how you feel. You represent us in our ward area. We want to know how you feel about us in your ward area. You represent us. Not only that, I have spoken several times and I said I wasn't going to give up. I did a petition last year. They give you 7 days to respond back. I still to this day have not received a response back from Randy Morris. I have seen him several times, spoke to him on phone, etc. And still have not got no response for that. Not only that, they already came to my house with the energy program through the Franklin. The meter man came out and checked my house, and still no one haven't responded back from the city, which is the city manager. They already received a letter away from Walter Cost, which is not even licensed to do any of this work. And he's representing y'all in the city. He's coming out to people's houses saying that he know what he's supposed to be doing. He don't even have no equipment. This is what y'all have for somebody to come out and do your work for y'all. You're supposed to have y'all status correct in a professional way and make sure everything got its T-dotted, signed. But y'all don't. You have to check back on everybody's background, make sure everybody's licensed, and have everything certified according to the city is supposed to have. It's supposed to meet the state guidelines. A lot of stuff is not compliant to the state guidelines. You can't even call the state guidelines people to complain about y'all because y'all mislevel whatever city. So we have to come back and speak back to Randy Martin. He's not gonna solve our problem. Y'all are. That's what we hired y'all for. We got him here, he's just one person trying to comply to everybody complaints. He can't comply to all these people that's writing him letter. Y'all still don't have a suggestion box in front of the light bill place. So we can write our suggestions, complaints, and concerns. We have to write stuff in writing and still don't get no response. My other concern is that people's got Section 8 houses. If they get put out of their houses because of their lights being shut off, they will put them out. Then they will have to find somewhere else to stay. Y'all know this. And then they go somewhere else, still got that bill from that place and got another bill. How can they pay these bills? It don't make no sense. And y'all are not thinking about the people that's on oxygen tank, sick, cannot go nowhere, on disability. You pick at people's out there because of their income. You think because of their income they can pay this high light bill? No, they have other expense, just like y'all did. So it's not fair that y'all trying to take advantage of these people. There's other people work out here, work hard, work out of Franklin to bring in money into Franklin in order to live. And still, do you think it's fair that they spending all their money, gas and stuff to try to get back and forth to work and still can't make it there, wear and tearing on their car, can't even get their car fixed, can't even get an increase? You know, it's just hurting all the way around different people. So I'm speaking on behalf of all different types of people. Because not everybody's low income is what you require. If you cut your hours get cut back, yes, you can meet low income. Ain't that right? Yes. So don't say low income. Just say people trying to strive to live. And we trying to live. But we can't live without y'all keep on raising up the bill. How you going? And another thing, you dropped my bill at $321. It went down $148 difference. I deserve a refund. Because in that case, I had my house winterized. I already told you. They didn't came out, didn't find no fault. And also I got papers and documents saying that I also did my own winterization and everything. And if you can't find any problems with my house, why is my bill high? I pay gas. Regardless if I use any assistance in Franklin, yes, I meet their guidelines, I can get the service. So what I just have to say one more thing.
You got
We have
10 seconds.
to, when you on their social service or whatever their assistance, they don't pay the whole bill. They just pay some of it. So don't act like they pay the whole bill. We still have to pay something on the bill regardless.
Understood, your time's up. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Linwood Johnson, 301 Hall Street.
I'd like to say good evening to the council. Citizens Against Electrical Highlight Bill, 4/22/2013. City of Franklin City Council, in care of Randy Martin, City Manager, Franklin, Virginia, 23851. Residential electrical meter accuracy. Dear City Council members, in accordance to Virginia Freedom of Information Act 2.2-3700, I am requesting answers to the following questions and documentation. How many electrical department complaints have been received within the last 4 months? What was the nature of the complaint? Please state a summary of payment problems, meter complaints. What actions was taken to resolve these complaints? Does the city of Franklin have the equipment to test their meters for proper operation? Load testing, electrical arc testing, radio control meter reading testing. The dates the meters were checked for accuracy. The methods used to check the meters for accuracy. The identity and certifications of the employee that checked the meters for accuracy. How often is the equipment that is used to test the meters for accuracy and proper function calibrated for accuracy? Does the city calibration for testing the equipment before using it at residential homes for electrical loading? Has that been done? If yes, date of the test of the equipment for calibration. Did the city test the meters for arc problems? Was the residency checked for grounding problems? These are the questions and documentation I would like in writing, and you may contact me for further information if you need it. Thank you. There are other individuals who have some letters also, and I would like to know, Vice Mayor Cheatham, what would be a particular and proper time for them to come to do that?
I would think for Mr. Martin to be picking them up, when would be the best time for them to turn in their letters? Just leave them in the back?
If I could have that one.
Give them to our secretary.
Give them to Lisa?
Thank you.
If anybody else has a letter, Lisa's right here, and you can bring them to her at the corner.
It's not for him. It's not for him. It's not for you, it's for him.
Lisa.
And that concludes citizens' time. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Mr. Martin, I just got a message that there is no sound for the... Right, for the broadcast. Thank you. You got it. Again, are there any amendments to the agenda? Mr. McLemore, Mr. Burgess? All right.
No.
Being no amendments, we'll go to the consent agenda. First, we need to talk about the minutes from March the 25th. I'm sure everybody's had a chance to read them as they have been changed. Are there any amendments to the minutes for the 25th? Being none, do I hear a motion to accept the minutes of the 25th?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the minutes for the 25th.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Being none, all in favor, please motion by saying aye. Nay, do this by the same.
Nay.
Aye.
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 The ayes have it. The minutes are accepted as written. Next, the minutes for April the 9th, the regular meeting. Does anybody have a motion to accept the minutes?
8th,
Pardon?
April 8th,
April 8th, I'm sorry. What did I say?
9th.
Oh, I'm sorry, April 8th.
Move for approval.
Have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes for April the 8th?
I'm unable to locate the exchange that we had in the minutes with the mayor and myself regarding the procedures last week. Perhaps Lisa could point me to the page number.
Begins on page 29 of
Yeah.
74.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. 29, 74. Do you see that on camera? Vice Mayor, I'm unable to see it on 29, 74.
At the bottom of page 8
I think
of the
that's,
minutes for April the 8th.
No, this is, yeah, well, 9th? I thought you
No,
said.
it's April the 8th.
Okay, 29 or 24, you said first?
The minutes for March 25th have already been discussed and approved.
Not March, last week's meeting. Aren't we doing those meetings, those minutes?
That would be April the 8th.
Right.
right.
And that's on
And that's-
page 29 of 74. And the minutes state, Mayor Johnson Ashburn called for amendments to the agenda. There were no amendments to the agenda.
No, in reference to the incident that occurred that was discussed in our local newspaper, I don't see a mention of that when I challenged the procedure that we were following.
That was not, yeah.
When the speaker talked from Western Tide Water.
Right, that was not an amendment to the agenda.
I didn't ask about a minute. You're
No,
asking
that was
who-
not a minute. That was not in the minutes of the agenda. Are you wishing to
Then the minute,
propose an
I propose
amendment?
amendment to have that put into the minutes of the agenda.
There's an amendment to the motion. Is there a second on that? Being,
I'll second it, but I'm not sure why. You're welcome to put it in the minutes if you want to put it to point out something where you were wrong. I would think you'd want to just let that go on by. But if you want it in there, second the motion.
Actually, that's a disagreement between us, Mr.
we haven't
Councilman.
put it on the discussion yet.
Oh.
We have a motion and a second. Now, is there any discussion?
And the motion
Yes.
is to amend it,
To am-
just
to
want to
amend-
clarify, to add that
To add the
comment about,
discussion.
not verbatim, you're not talking about verbatim, just to acknowledge that a discussion occurred, because,
And I guess the nature of the discussion.
yeah, we don't typically put all
Right,
discussion.
well, I would like for the
Just
record to
want that-
reflect, because it was put out in the public.
I'm
that-
clear, I just want to make sure I
Okay, well,
understood what you.
I just want
Okay.
the minutes to reflect that I was challenging a procedure, not the lady that was speaking, and certainly not her organization. But I was challenging the fact that the time for the people to ask for donations or support was between 5:30 and 7, and then began citizens' time. So I was challenging procedure. And I was considered rude because I questioned the mayor as to her procedure. So I think that me questioning the procedure is worthy of being in the minutes.
Okay, I'm clear now.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
I don't understand what you want, the wording that you want to put, because it was a discussion, and no action was taken. So I don't know what you want the minutes to reflect.
I just told you I would like the minutes to reflect that Councilman McLemore challenged the mayor on the procedural or process of allowing someone to speak for the same purpose that we allotted between 5:30 and 7. She went beyond that and allowed them to use the citizens' time for that purpose. So therefore, That, in my opinion, was out of the procedure. Everybody else could have came and did it during citizens' time, but we set aside a time for people to do that. So therefore, when someone missed that, it wasn't our fault. Now, that person could have asked for an amendment so that they could come into regular citizens' time with their request, but no such request was made. So therefore, I challenged the procedure, and subsequently, because I spoke, I was ridiculed for being rude. Well, what's the need in talking, trying to stop a crime after the crime is committed? So therefore, I was trying to bring that to the attention of the mayor. So therefore, I challenged the procedure.
I think you said that a few times.
Right, that is what I would like.
Bring it up to the.
That's what I would like reflected in the minutes, that I challenged the procedure. It was not my attempt to be rude.
Not for the fact that the person was from out of the, not a city resident.
I did say, yes,
No.
and that also, I did say that also.
Okay.
I didn't challenge anybody else. It's been.
Because nobody else came up after.
That same night, the Isle of Wight lady came in and talked about the electric, and not one word came out of your mouth.
And people have been here talking about the Navy from Isle of Wight, and not one word. That's why I'm
Because
saying, I'm sure you weren't in there that you were wrong.
Because this was a special set-aside time for people to do that. And
But you
when
did not-
she didn't
you did
make
not
it,
say
because
that
she was a
that time.
camp, she could just come and do it
No,
when she wanted.
that's absolutely not correct, and I think that the chair recognized her, therefore, it was the chair's prerogative to recognize her at that point in time. She did not cut off anybody from citizen time talking that night. Everybody got a chance to talk. Now, we've got a motion on the floor, we've got a second. Is there any more discussion on it?
I just want to make sure, is the motion to amend the previous motion?
To amend the motion to accept the minutes by adding this into it.
Before
You haven't,
One more.
you haven't voted on the minutes.
Before I can vote, I really want to see what the wording is. So if we need to bring these back to the next meeting, then I would like to see them taken, because I want to see what the wording is before we vote.
That's fine. And I would like for it to become from the videotape, so they can have it accurate.
Right. So we need to make another motion to table the minutes?
I think so.
All right. I guess we first need to kill these last two motions, right? Or just motion to table? Can I have a motion to table the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
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 The ayes have it. The minutes we brought up next meeting with the wording from the tapes as to what the was actually exchanged between the mayor.
Mr. Cheatham, did you vote?
Yes, it did.
Again, you're
I
not,
kept it right in order.
just for clarity, you're not asking for a verbatim accounting of that, or
I think he is.
Are
I think
you?
he wants to, exactly what was said exchanged between him and the mayor.
Well, actually, Mr. Martin, it wasn't that very long exchange. It was
But, I mean,
basically,
the policies, I just don't want to set a dangerous precedent of verbatim minutes would be 50 pages instead
Well,
of 20.
if it reflects what, according to the DVD, if it reflects what occurred,
Okay.
that would be fine.
That's clear. Thank you.
Departmental reports is in a separate file. Are there any questions on these reports? Do we need to approve these departmental reports? Okay.
No.
Financial. We start off with the school board budget amendments.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Cheatham. Good evening, all of the council members. Mr. Martin, Mr. Williams, good evening.
Good evening.
Before you, you have an amendment from the Franklin City Public Schools. The amendment is to amend the fiscal year 2012-2013 budget to reflect the reward of 2 grants. The first grant comes from the Franklin Education Foundation in an amount of $1,000. And if I'm recalling correctly, that is a donation to be used for the school system robotics and the Lego team. The second grant is a state grant for the mentor teacher program. You do have the supporting documentation for your reference. The required action from City Council tonight is to authorize the amendment of $3,698 to the fiscal year 2013 school system budget and appropriate these funds for expenditure.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I will be abstaining from this as I'm a party to this transaction.
Okay, very good. Do I have a motion to
So move.
accept the budget amendment 2013-21? We have a motion to accept. Do I have a second? And a motion is second. Is there any discussion on the budget amendment? Do you have a discussion?
I didn't say it did.
No. You're looking like you might. Being no discussion, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay, the opposite. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And an abstain. Thank you.
Okay, the next item, financial matter, is presentation of the financial report for the period ending March 31st, 2013. And we do recognize that this is the end of the third quarter, so we are fastly approaching the end of our fiscal year. And I did prepare a presentation for City Council's information, and you do have a copy before you. But again, I just want to pretty much highlight some of the essential information pertaining to the city finances as of March 31st, 2013. First, we're going to take a review of the general property taxes and other local taxes of the city. The current slide compares the fiscal year 2013 overall general property taxes collected compared to the same period in fiscal year 2012. A year-to-date for general property taxes, which of course is inclusive of all of your real estate, your personal property, your public service, your machinery and tools, and your penalty and interest on your taxes. That amount as of the end of the quarter is $4.18 million, which represents 60.1% of the total budget. As you can see, our prior year, fiscal year 2012, that amount was 62% of the budget. So we do see that we are tracking pretty much close to our prior year in terms of the budget. We do project at the end of the fiscal year, we expect to collect $6.9 million in general property taxes, which is an increase over the prior year. And that, City Council members, we did expect because we did have, of course, our increase in our real estate tax rate. And the city does expect to receive some slightly higher revenue in the area of personal property taxes. Just wanted to give you a brief overview of the real estate tax history. We do want to look at, of course, what we are at this particular juncture in the fiscal year, which is this percentage right here. For real estate taxes, we've collected about $2.69 million. That is 51% of the budget. We do understand that we do have our second half of our taxes that are going to be due on June 5th. The budget for the current fiscal year is $5.2 million. And we do want to go ahead and highlight what we expect to receive at the end of the fiscal year, and I'm projecting about $5.21 million to be received. And this, again, council members, just give you an estimate, give you a history of several years where we have collected our real estate taxes. And it's sort of kind of trending up, and this is what you kind of want to see from a real estate tax perspective, not necessarily a huge hike in the tax rate increase, but also you want to increase your tax base. So you have about $4.81 million back here in fiscal year 9-10, and again, fiscal year 13, we estimate that number will grow to $5.2 million. Looking at the personal property tax history, at the end of the quarter, we were about 93% of budget, $2.20 million collected. The total budget for the year is about $2.36 million, and we do project at the end of the fiscal year, the city will collect about $2.34 million in your personal property taxes. Other local tax analysis. From a local perspective, those taxes continue to perform well. Your sales and use taxes, your lodging, your cigarette taxes are expected all to exceed the budget at the end of the fiscal year. Your meals taxes is expected to meet budget. Consumer utility taxes would be slightly less than budget. And your business license, your motor vehicle taxes, and other taxes are expected to be also slightly under budget at the conclusion of the fiscal year. These particular taxes, as shown, do reflect some gains from the prior year period. Your sales and use tax, about a 5% gain from the prior year period. The meals taxes, about a 1.7% gain, recognizing that cigarette taxes represents the hugest gain at 34% over the prior period. And your lodging taxes at 2.8% also increased from the last quarter, fiscal year 2012. And these, of course, council members, are taxes that are indicative of your economy. So again, these particular taxes continue to perform well. Taking a look at your meals tax, I just want to provide just a brief update of the history of the meals taxes. The graph here on my left indicates that we have 72% of the budget collected at the end of the quarter, about $937,000. When you compare that to the prior year period, that is an increase. As you can see here, last March we collected about $922,000 at this particular time. And again, this taxes is accrued on a 1-month basis. Your sales tax history, looking at a history here, you can see back in 2010, you were about 1.5 million. The budget for the current fiscal year is 1.67 million. As of March 31st, 2013, we've collected about 78% of the budget for sales taxes. That's about 1.3 million. Look where you were last fiscal year this time. That shows 1.238 million. So again, as I stated earlier, you do reflect gains in this particular tax as well from the prior period, recognizing that this particular tax is accrued on a 2-month basis. Looking at your lodging tax history, we do see that we had a very good year last year, fiscal year 2012, where you had $198,000 collected in lodging taxes. We believe that had a lot to do with folks staying in terms of getting our IP plant back up and operational, so that was a very good year, 2012. We did budget $140,000, expecting that that would be less for fiscal year 13. And at the conclusion of this year, we expect to receive about $150,000. Where we are as of the end of the quarter, we are about $116,000, which represents about 87% of the budget. Last year, this time, is tracking pretty closely. I believe these taxes started to slow down as the fiscal year kind of progressed, but $113,000 last year this time compared to about $116,000 collected as of March 2013. As mentioned, cigarette taxes did reflect the largest gain over the prior year period, recognizing that back in 2010, about $230,000 collected. Our budget for this year is $262,000. We are currently at 98% of our budget for our cigarette taxes. We project by the end of the fiscal year, we'll be about $300,000. I believe that is a conservative projection, and we'll see how that goes. But again, as you can see, compared to where you were last year this time, about $194,000 collected versus the $260,000 that we are at March 31st, 2013. Other local revenues consist of your permit, your fees, and your fines. Collectively, overall, they are expected to be about $115,000 at the end of the fiscal year, which is slightly under our budget, which is collectively about $125,000. As of the end of the quarter, received about $87,000 from permits, fees, and fines. Our core fines and actually higher. We do show slightly lower in building permits and fees for this particular fiscal year. But again, we do expect to be just slightly under budget for the fiscal year in this particular source. The charges for service largely includes the ambulance fees collection, in addition to your collections for waste disposal services. At the end of the quarter, we were about $1.8 million collected, which is 69% of the budget. And as you can see, you're pretty consistent with the prior year. You're right at 69% this year. You were 68% last year, so very consistent with those revenue sources. Overall, we do expect the projections to meet budget, with waste collection and disposal fees being slightly lower than budget, about $20,000. Also included in this source, of course, you are aware that they are the administrative services transfers from the other funds that's included in charges for services. State aid, most of these revenue sources are consistent with the prior year. Your tax relief from the personal property taxes is consistent, of course, with the prior year. Your taxes on your recordation taxes, slightly less than the prior year. We do expect to receive about $28,000 more in street and highway maintenance funds. Communication taxes would be slightly higher than the prior year, and both shared expenses and the taxes that the city receives for auto rental, both are consistent with the prior year collections. Overall, you're about 76% of the budget, which is virtually the same as where you were in the prior fiscal year. That concludes the revenue portion of the general fund. We'll take a brief look at the general fund expenditures. Expenditures at the end of the quarter were $9.6 million, which is 66% of the budget. As you can see, last year this time, we were at $9.8 million, 69% of the general fund budget. The primary changes associated with the decrease from the prior year is attributed to the following. In general government administration, you do have less expenditures in the areas of the real estate assessor's office, in which we did not employ the services of an assessor this year because of the biannual reassessment. And also our professional fees for our audit in general government was considerably less. So that attributed to a reduction in our general government administration expenditures. For public works, we've discussed it several times in terms of the savings realized from our tipping fees, which attributed to the reduction in public works from the prior year. And then you did have a few other departments where positions weren't filled. You do have some vacancy savings in the current fiscal year. Overall, we do not expect to come back to City Council to ask for any additional appropriations, except in one particular area, and that's where the city pays the credit card fees for the use of credit card fees by our citizens. That amount is expected to exceed budget, and of course, we will bring this item to City Council during the budget discussions. Overall, City Council members, we do expect to increase our fund balance at the end of the fiscal year, and I'm pleased to say that the city is closer to meeting its minimum fund balance policy requirements, which you all are aware that it is supposed to be 15% of the general operating budget. So based on the revenues that the city are bringing in and the conservative expenditures of the departments, that we do expect again to have some increase in our fund balance, and again, closer, if not meeting our fund balance. And we, of course, we'll be discussing fund balance at during the budget discussion. Looking at the water and sewer fund, we do not have much to report from our prior report, other than the fact that the revenues collected at the end of March is about 72% of the budget. This is slightly less than the prior period revenue, but of course it is more in line with the budget. So we did project less, and we are coming in at those figures as expected. And of course, the expenditures overall in the fund, about $400,000 less, and also we expect that due to the completion of some capital initiatives in the prior year. In the airport fund, revenues for our jet fuel sales are about $78,700. Prior year period, $96,000. So you do see there is a decrease there, but also recognizing that on the expenditure side, you will also have a decrease in your purchases for your jet fuel. The capital outlay expenditures for the fund are higher this fiscal year because you do have two ongoing projects at the airport which are funded with state and federal grants. And that is the taxi, parallel, and runway project. The electric fund cash balance at the conclusion of March 31st, 2013, increased $83,000 from the prior month, the amount being $370,000 at the end of the quarter. And since the period ending July 30th, that represent a $138,000 gain from July 30th to March 30th of this particular fiscal year. And you can kind of see that highlighted in the right here, from the $232,000 to the $370,000. Again, the gain from the prior month in which we experienced a decrease in cash, we did reflect an increase the month of March of nearly $83,000 in the fund.
Excuse me, question?
Sure.
I'm not an accountant, but are you saying we are $138,000 to the good after expenses?
No, I'm strictly giving you from a cash balance perspective as to how much the cash has increased from one period to the next. That period being the end of July all the way through the end of March 30th.
But the balance is after you've taken, it's subtracted the expenses from the revenue, isn't it?
That is, yes, sir, that is correct. You are taking into consideration the revenues that have been collected during those periods, in addition to the expenditures that have occurred. And this is your cash balance at the end of the period.
138,000 to the good.
No, you've just an increase. I just want to be clear. It's not necessarily, I mean, to the good, I guess I'm kind of confused on that particular statement, but it's pretty much just an increase in the balance.
Basic that any citizen that's watching, it's not a math genius or an accountant. If we spent $10,739,000 in expenses, and we made $10,745,36, then we made a profit. Expenses, when you make more than you spend, that's not a profit?
Don't you have to pay your note payments?
No, then it's a part of expenses.
No, they're not.
Not the principal. Principal's not part of the expense. Interest is, but not principal.
Not principal.
The key point here with this report is last year, as you'll see on the next page, next slide, we were losing money during the year, and we lowered our cash position, reserves, if you will,
And now we're
to a
making.
dangerous level. And by city council policy, the manager was required to present a plan to build those back to the policy required levels. And we have made this much progress during the first 8 months of the year.
Building a reserve fund.
Replenishing the diminished reserve, as you'll see on the next sheet.
I think it's a little misleading in saying 138,000 when really from the beginning of the year, we're only up $5,000 from where we were before.
June 30th, that's
From June 30th. So
That is
beginning as
correct,
of
from
July
June
1, we're basically at a break even before we pay our debt.
Yes, and Councilman Cheatham is referring to the cash balance at July 1 versus the cash balance at March 30th. The next slide represents exactly what Mr. Martin referred to in terms of looking at the cash position last fiscal year this time. And again, we're realizing that we're at the opposite end of the spectrum in which we, again, had a huge reduction in our cash balance where it was, let's start from July 1, 1.3 million at July 1, at March 31st, 552,000. So this particular box right here starts at least from July 30th, from March 30th, realizing that again, we had over a $600,000 decline. And again, I kind of put that there to kind of show you, as indicated in the previous slide, that at least we are moving in the reverse direction in trying to get that cash balance where it needs to be. Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm in the right year, but I believe part of the reason that we lost our cash position was because Dominion Resources passed a pretty good increase on to us. In January, and we did not pass that increase on to the citizens until September. And it's put us in a financial bind because we didn't do that, and we were going to get some savings from other places that we didn't get. I think that was the same year, and that's when we started seeing a decrease in our cash position.
Right, that is
That
correct.
was
That is
the
part
very
of it.
first 6-month period of our new contract. We had a pretty substantial increase from Dominion that we didn't pass be a year off. I think that's the right year. That's what we're presenting as 2011.
Well, this FY 11 starts July 1st, 2008. So that was already there, then in June, we had another 7% increase from
June of,
2011.
Yeah, I thought we had 2 increases that year. I think, isn't that what you're saying? We had 2 big increases, of which we passed on. Did not pass on, I should say. We passed on raising rates.
yes, thank you. We did pass
Right.
them on. We passed.
Raising rates.
Giving them an increase.
Right.
Yeah, the deferral of rate adjustments is the cause of why the cash dwindled, no question.
We're playing catch up all the way around.
Okay. And the next slide kind of shows you a pictorial of exactly what we were talking about in the prior 2 slides, whereby the blue line represents the fiscal year 2011-2012 cash trend, and the red line represents the fiscal year 2012-2013 cash trend. And as indicated before, you can see this downward spiral in terms of cash from the beginning to the end of the quarter. And fiscal year 13, where we are, we can see, even though we had some fluctuations whereby it went down in 1 or 2 months, we can see that trend kind of reversing and taking an upward approach. And of course, this is what we want to see continuing throughout the end of the fiscal year. But again, I think this gives you a good overview of where you were last year compared to the way that the cash is trending in the current fiscal year. And then the last slide, which appears to be hidden in my presentation, but you do have a copy in front of you. And the only thing that I wanted to share with council members in terms of the revenue that the city has billed in the current fiscal year compared to all the payments that have come in to go towards the cash position, the billing for the fiscal year is $10.78 million. The city has collected in payments year-to-date of $10.4 million, which leaves about $372,000 in payments that have not been collected. We do understand that you do have some allowance for doubtful accounts in terms of any billing and collection cycle. However, this is 96.55% of, this ratio is 96.5% your total payments versus what has been billed year-to-date.
Total payments including all prior year catch-ups, right?
This is, yes, this can be any payment for any year. This is strictly payments that are posted to cash this fiscal year, not saying this for this year, could have been for 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Whatever the city treasurer is collecting and posting to cash this particular fiscal year, that's what those payments reflect.
I just want to make sure that citizens don't think that we're collecting 96% of our revenue.
That's right, absolutely.
I have a question, just in general terms, approximately what do we collect monthly in revenues?
For this particular fund?
Yeah.
Or altogether?
So you said you're like at 96%, something of that nature.
I can-
And if you collect what you normally collect, average, in this month and next month leading into June, ending off the fiscal year, what do we collect on an average month?
I can tell you in just a second. Okay.
Isn't that right here in front? Just
Yes.
basically looking at what was received, payments? Just look at the average of what she has on her sheet.
Well, see, if she was able to say that, I mean, I might understand that, but if she,
It varies,
you know,
Councilman.
you're an accountant, okay? You may be a little better at figures than a lot of the citizens.
Well, I'm just saying, just take a look at your sheet on the question you're asking, and you can see about what we're collecting.
On an average month.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it and see about what we're doing every month.
It's
Some
gonna
months are
probably-
much lower at 900,000, but
Okay,
for
so
average,
we're-
it's about
we're-
1.1, 1.2.
Yeah, the average is about 1.1,
Right.
$1.1 million a
just
month.
roughly.
Okay, that's all I ask.
Okay, yes. It varies, of course, from month to month, summer, winter, and
I
so
said
forth,
an
but that's an average.
An
yes.
average. Simple as, $1.1 million.
Any other questions?
Yes, before you leave, question I want to jump back over to the personal property tax. Can you make it a little clearer, particularly for the citizens, regarding the high mileage information? Is this to say, and what is the criteria for a citizen to be exempt from paying property taxes if their vehicle is over 100,000 miles?
Most
May I-
likely that would have to come from the
Treasurer?
From the Commissioner.
Commissioner
Revenue.
of
Commissioner of Revenue.
Okay.
We can,
Can she answer that?
Would you like to respond to that?
come up front. If you don't-
Don't be bashful.
Thank you, Ms. Rollins.
Surely welcome.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Just because a vehicle has 100,000 miles on it does not mean that you would be exempt from paying taxes.
Okay, because I'm reading what's on our website, and it would lead you to believe that. So that's why I was asking, what is the criteria that you would still have to be paying taxes? And please allow me. It says the City of Franklin residents who own vehicles with over 100,000 miles as of January 1st, 2013 can bring their pink state inspection slip showing the odometer reading, or you may bring your vehicles to the City Hall, back entrance on the First Avenue, and have the clerk in the Commissioner of Revenue's office come out and read your odometer during the month of January. Then it says there is no automatic forgiveness and tax valuation because of your vehicle is over $100,000. Depending on the model and age of your vehicle, it could add value.
Exactly.
So what is the criteria that you would receive forgiveness on that 100,000 mile vehicle?
It's based on the NADA guide, what is in their guide. It depends on the category of the vehicle, number one. It does depend on the mileage of the vehicle, but sometimes it adds value to the assessment, not taking it away. It never exonerates it so that you don't owe anything.
So what is this message supposed to convey to the citizens on our
That they need to
website?
bring their pink inspection stickers in the month of January to our office, or come have their meter read,
And
their
if
odometer read.
they do that, what benefit is it to be to them?
It could be a deduction on their personal property taxes. There are certain classes of vehicles that would get a deduction. It's not every class, it's dependent on the NADA guide.
And it's also not going to completely eliminate it just because it's over, it's a deduction, from the value? Or from
Exactly. Right.
Deduction from the value.
Exactly.
Which would lower their tax burden
Right,
proportionally.
right.
Right, but it would not completely
You see, there's still
exonerate their
people,
bill.
before you came, Mr. Martin, there was a governor who ran on eliminating the property taxes on vehicles over 100,000 miles. And the citizens have yet to see that happen or understand why it's not happening. So that, all I wanted to do is bring clarification, because when I saw it on the website, it gave the impression that you could, in one part, bring it down, you can get forgiveness, and if you're over 100,000, and in another way, it says there's no guarantee you're gonna get no forgiveness.
The 100,000 mile deduction is different from the Personal Property Tax Relief Act, which we get $1,480,000 from the state of Virginia that goes towards offsetting the cost of your personal property bill. In other words, if you look at your bill, you don't pay all of your bill. The citizen does not pay 100% of their bill. 61% of their bill they pay. The other part, the state pays.
And that's separately stated on the personal property tax bill.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's car tax relief, if I'm not.
Exactly, right, the
Right.
Personal Property
Second
Tax
line in
Relief
it.
Act.
Right.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, thank you. I do think that does it. Were there any other questions for Ms. Rollins? You know she's gotten comfortable again. Being no more questions, we go to old new business. We have the Village at Woods Edge. And this is dealing with the tax exempt bond issue.
You want to start this, you want me to?
We have a letter in our packet from Mr. Williams, and Mr. Williams, would you like to go through that for us, please?
Yes, sir, I'll be happy to. As indicated in the letter, the Industrial Development Authority had a meeting on April the 17th. That meeting was to entertain the request of the Village at Woods Edge for the ability to use a portion of our tax-exempt bond capacity. The Industrial Development Authority considered the request, passed a resolution. I have a copy of the resolution with me tonight. I have a certificate of public hearing indicating that the Industrial Development Authority held a public hearing to elicit comments from the public, which was required by law. After the public hearing, the Industrial Development Authority discussed the proposal. Then a motion was made to adopt the request, and that passed on a 6-0 vote. One member was absent from the meeting. So I have all of that here. It's signed by the chairman of the Industrial Development Authority, and the secretary of the Industrial Development Authority has executed the certificate of public hearing. What's being asked tonight is for council to adopt the resolution that is contained in the agenda package. And I'll be happy to answer questions, and those that I can't answer, maybe Mr. Martin can answer.
Okay, well, let's get it on the floor. Can I have a motion to pass the resolution for the industrial bonds for Village of Woods Edge for the memory unit?
So move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I believe we went through this at the last meeting as well, pretty thorough. Anybody have any discussion on the? Have a motion and a second on the floor to pass the resolution to allow us to sign, the city to sign this for the industrial bonds for the memory unit. All in favor signify by saying aye, nays by nay.
Aye.
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 The resolution passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have an update on House Bill 2313, and anybody that's not sure of what that one is, that is the bill where we get to be taxed and pay into an organization of which we have no vote. This is a bill that's passed. It's a taxation to help build roads and do things in the Hampton Roads area. This bill is to help us get a vote on that. Now, this was taken up in the Hampton Roads Partnership, and it was actually tabled for us to get the vote until the next meeting. And I'll let Mr. Martin take over and give more explanation if needed.
Okay, I previously emailed the council about this when we first heard about it around April 4th. When we got the word that Franklin, Southampton County, and Surrey County were going to be included in the area that is going to be affected by the legislation that's referred to as House Bill 2313, transportation funding, which changed the transportation funding formula statewide. I won't go through all the particulars of that, but I'll be glad to answer any questions. But suffice it to say that the governor's office and the legislature deemed it necessary to modify pointed out, the vice chair pointed out, the opportunity, if this is approved, to have a voice in the transportation planning organization, the Hampton Roads TPO, as it's referred to, the acronym. We are members of the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, and that is the boundary utilized for these, the impact of these taxes by the legislature in their revised bill. The city does not have membership on the TPO, though, and for us to have a vote and a voice, it's necessary that we enter into, at least on an interim basis, with this agreement then we'll look at longer term, whether any modification of legislation is necessary, or to petition to actually become full members of the TPO. That'll come at a subsequent date, but the issue at hand is these taxes begin being collected July 1, and for us to have an input and voice into the use of those funds, we need something of record showing us having a vote and participating in the process and eligible to receive any funds that come from it. I've given you a very simple, hopefully, explanation of a very complicated piece of legislation, and I'll be glad to try to respond. I would end with this. We're talking about substantial dollars. The estimate for the first full year is $1.3 million from both sources, the gasoline tax and the companion increase in sales tax. That would be the amount that's estimated to be raised within the city of Franklin towards this this project and this funding source. And so it is a lot of money over a 5-year period, in excess of $6 million, almost $7 million is estimated. So this could do a lot for transportation needs, and we want to make sure we get our fair share. So it's our recommendation from staff level. This is being presented also to Southampton County tonight by their administrator, Mike Johnson, and I'm recommending that you take action to approve this. And then, as Vice Mayor pointed out, this will go to the TPO when they have their retreat in May, at which time hopefully they will concur with this interim approach by entering into this memorandum of agreement between the city and the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization. I would point out there's one minor word change in the proposed resolution that I'm sure that Vice Mayor will go over when you get ready to take action. But in the interim, I'll answer any questions or make any further comments desired.
And the word change would come into the third paragraph on the last sentence where it says, in all regions. It should read, in all localities. The last sentence of the third paragraph where it ends with Planning District 23, right before that where it says regions, should read localities, and that's been agreed upon by all parties.
Did you say this had been tabled?
Yeah, for some reason in the TPO, Norfolk pushed to have it tabled, not because they disagreed with the memorandum, but they thought it took time. They wanted to look to see if we should be joining first or have a memorandum first. And the general consensus I thought around there, even though they voted to table it, was that this would be the best approach, is to have a memorandum first, because it's going to take a while to work in as to how we would join that. Now this affects 3 entities. It affects us, Southampton County, and Surrey. Surrey, however, is in a different position than most people because they actually belong also to another district, the one up out of Richmond. So they made this very well shift over there because they don't have the MSA and all that they once did because of their transportation numbers, their commuting numbers. So this is a general thing is that this memorandum will at least get us a voice at the table and put the cards back on their table that we need to have this passed at the May meeting.
And one other comment that was made by representatives of TPO, I think it was the mayor of Norfolk, is they wanted to hear input from the community, so this is an expression of input by going ahead and approving the MOA. Correct. And putting it back to them for action.
Either way, we're going to be taxed.
Either way.
But we want a voice in how our tax money is going to be spent. May not pass because of our voice, but at least we'll have a voice in it.
Question. Is this one of, is this going to be, as far as the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission is concerned, I sat on there for a brief time, and I know that many of the services that we participate in, we pay separate membership fees for. Will there be an additional membership fee for us to be able to have this voice at that table?
Not to my knowledge, but I'll certainly ask that question, but I don't believe so. I think there may be a small administrative fee, but this TPO is almost like a sub-body of the planning district.
Of the Planning District Commission, right.
So excuse me, if we join the whole thing, if we do become full-fledged members, there will be a cost.
Yeah, they probably do
But not
charge you
for,
some.
my understanding, it wasn't for just voting on the spending of the tax money, but we wouldn't make decisions on a lot of their other things that they talk about.
Because, true, we're gonna have to pay the taxes according to what you said. We're gonna have to pay the fees anyway. We're gonna have to pay the taxes anyway. That's mandated by the state, I assume. So therefore, if we have no control in having to pay that, we're gonna get it anyway. Do we?
No,
want
we won't necessarily get it.
Well, then
They
that's
will
good.
get it.
They will get it.
Yeah.
Okay? But we won't necessarily be able, the governing body will vote on where, by majority, where these funds will go for benefiting the roads, correct?
Not the local governing body, the TPO.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But they are limited by the legislation. The funds have to be spread throughout all the localities in the area that's affected by the tax.
In the TPO, though.
Yes.
Right now, we could very well be excluded, was my understanding.
Exactly.
That's, from my understanding, that's the way it could be also. So I think that before we vote on this, we should find out what is it going to cost us to get that vote at the table, because taking into consideration, you have a lot of other people up there that's going to vote. And though we paid to have a say-so in that vote, our vote won't count very much if we are outvoted all the time by these bigger cities and these other localities that need roads, and their expenses are greater than ours. And if all of the allocated funds are going to be going to them, why do we need to pay additional fees just so that we can vote aye or nay as to whether Chesapeake gets the money for their project or not? So I would like to know before we vote if what the fee is going to be in order for us to participate in that vote, or can we just let them do what they want to do because they're going to do that anyway?
Well, I wouldn't recommend that, because they're not going to do what they want to do. This is a body that has divided, 2/3 of the membership has to approve several of the projects by their bylaws. So it's not just driven by the large communities. They have similar voting. There's a formula for the votes. It's pretty complicated, but the city will have a voice along with all the other smaller communities in the area as well. But if you don't participate, you're not going to have any input
in that particular issue.
They're going to take all the money.
In that particular issue.
Or any funds.
Yeah.
On that particular issue. And what I'm saying is, from being a member of that board, I realize how we are a very small fish in that pond.
Sure.
So therefore, we are paying to be at the big boys' table.
But we get services for the planning district fees that we pay. We use them all the time. They're doing our comprehensive plan and other things.
I'm aware. I used to sit on the board.
I know.
But didn't you say, I mean to interrupt you, but didn't you say that to sign the memorandum of understanding, there's not much cost?
Not to my knowledge, there won't
Only
be.
if we join, which
That-
will come at a later date.
That is the way I understood it.
Yeah.
Okay, I did not hear any fees for having a memorandum.
I'm not aware of any
That may have been
fees.
what Paul Frame was a little upset about, is we had a voice without having to pay.
Could be, but in any event, even if we had to pay, you're probably talking about a very small amount compared to the millions that we're going to be eligible to receive for capital projects.
But this eligibility, is it predicated on the votes?
Yes.
So if we're outvoted, we won't get any of this money anyway.
Well, but again, the legislation requires that we be a recipient of the funds,
Of some money.
some portion of the funds.
If we don't have a vote in it, we won't get any funds. If we have a vote in it, we will get some funds.
Yeah, because we're talking about what I would call a significant amount of money over a 5-year period. It's $1 billion that's coming to the district,
Right.
is what's estimated. So it's, for us to get back some or most or hopefully more than our 6 or 7 million, I think is a possibility and certainly something we would fight for. And hopefully all the communities, and there was actually discussion at the CAO meeting following the planning district discussion and the TPO discussion, that one formula of it will be that everybody would get some of the money every year. And hopefully that'll be the way. They're going to have this retreat in May to determine how it would be, and this would go into effect in July. But I think it's important that we express our desire to be at the table and have a vote, as the Vice Mayor said. If we don't, then they may interpret our inaction as that we aren't interested. And I don't think we'd want to send that message. But I'll verify any fees, but at this point, I don't believe there are any fees related to our participation on this very limited basis in this interim agreement.
We have
Whoa.
a memorandum of understanding which does not state any fees.
No.
So if this was to be, if we pass this and then they go down and assess a fee, it'd have to come back to us to be reapproved, would it not?
I believe so.
So,
Yeah.
I don't see anything.
This is the extent of the agreement in total, as I understand it.
And this was read by all parties, including the chairman of the, or the director of the TPO and all, so. Do I have a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement between Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization and the City of Franklin and County of Southampton and Surrey?
So moved.
With the change of localities in the place of regions.
Second.
Got a motion and second. Is there any other discussion? Being none, signify by saying aye if you're for it or nay if you're against it.
Aye.
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 It passes to be signed.
Thank you. And I will keep you posted.
City Manager's Report, update on the budget.
Okay.
Mr. McLemore. Mr.
Ask
Burgess.
Ms. Rollins to assist me with parts of this, as well as the PowerPoint, that you have a copy before you at your place. First of all, one thing that's integral to the budget this year, just like it was last year, is the use of debt service reserves, our restricted fund balance that was created wisely by the City Council when the initial loss of the revenues from Isle of Wight, from the revenue sharing related to the closure of the International Paper Plant. That had such a significant impact. The City Council refinanced a significant portion of the debt and created a reserve within the budget process to try to build up revenues to help allow the city to phase back in, if you will, or handle the loss of that revenue and be prepared for the time that it would likely take for those revenues to come back to the city. In this information, we're going to cover where we're at with that reserve. Last year, it was recommended by the city administration in my first year as preparing the budget that we try to spread these funds, and you'll see a couple of bullets here that some of the reasons why the reserve was created, and I won't read all of those, but you see those. It obviously had a significant impact on the tax rate because we lost about, I think it was around $1.1 million in revenue in one fatal swoop, which had other residual impacts, obviously, on the local economy. What we did try to do was spread these funds out. Our last year, we recommended a multi-year approach. The council approved that, and on the slide 3, you'll see how much money was accumulated through June 30 of 2012, about $2.2 million in this reserve fund. For the current fiscal year budget, $876,000 was utilized or appropriated. We had another, the final under the original plan that was approved by the council, reserve injection of $242,000 in this year. That will leave a projection at the end of this budget year, $1,616,795 in these restricted reserves. The belief was again that the need for these funds would diminish slowly over the next couple of years. The other thing the city did this past calendar year at the end, back in December of this fiscal year, December 2012, the city made an effort to flatten our debt service payments, which were scheduled to dramatically increase in this fiscal year that's coming up beginning in July. And you can see on the bar graph, the gold bar shows what we were saddled with in terms of the debt that was going to be facing the city. And we chose the route of flattening those payments without extending the term or any other adverse action, and we actually were able to lower the interest rate in the process, and that contributed significantly to being able to flatten these payments. And it allowed us to even have some new monies to take care of some pent-up capital project needs that we were struggling with funding, particularly roof replacements and things of that nature for city buildings. So you see the prior to restructuring of this year and the financing. Next, we'll look at the FY13-14 budget impact. You see the difference in the debt, what we were looking at. It was going to go up from 542 in the current fiscal year in the general fund alone. And you see how all the other funds were going to be impacted. Significantly to point out is the water and sewer fund was going to see a major increase from 138,000 to 447 as a result of the expiration of the previous restructuring done back in 9-10. You see what the before was going to look like. We were going to see an increase of almost $700,000 in our annual debt service looking at next year's budget. When the staff became aware of this, we started working with the agency that the council authorized, Davenport, and we were able to overcome that. And you see what the impact on the next sheet we were able to accomplish in the current fiscal year by comparing the before and after on slide 6, which shows that we will basically see our debt almost a break even within $40,000 of breaking even with what it was actually slightly less as a result. And this is after all the actions that were taken in the fall. Okay, looking at slide 7, and you can see obviously why we're doing this, because this is a critical part of looking at next year's budget, is how we're able to include some or portion of that remaining debt reserve and trying to make a responsible decision about what we should do. On the next sheet, you will see, looking ahead at 13-14, what the before and after picture. We've lowered those debts for each of the funds except the electric fund, which we didn't restructure because of the small amount of debt that fund has and the relatively small amount of debt service that the electric fund pays. But we did include some capital expenditures and items, needed equipment replacements and other items that increases our the impact in that one fund, but we lowered it in every other fund. And collectively, we lowered it by over $580,000 by taking advantage of that restructuring and even including the new money. Looking at slide 8, we have the FY13-14 debt service obligation. And this is again comparing the fiscal year 12-13 after with the upcoming budget. And you see that our debt is staying relatively flat. It's going to go up $140,000, but compare that back to $600,000 or $700,000 as it was originally scheduled to go up. That's quite a bit of improvement. And the only areas it's going up are the areas where we did have some capital expenditures included in the new money, and also the expiration of the previous restructuring. Going to slide 9, you'll see the restructuring, refinance, and this is just another summary of where we were. The key part is the block there that says adjust based on budget need. Recommended use of FY14 budget. Last year, we set out a 3-year estimation of what we would need. This year, if we follow that strictly, it would be $872,205 of the remaining $1.6 million in that debt reserve. That would leave us with almost $750,000 for the following fiscal year, which would be fiscal year 14-15, to utilize. Whether you needed all of it or any portion of it, that would be available for the following year or beyond if the council so chooses when you do that year's budget. Looking at page 10, we're trying to look at the reserves and the debt obligation. You can see that in 15, the water and sewer fund stay almost exactly the same. This is trying to give you a snapshot of the following year's budget, not the one that we're preparing right now. And based on some debt reduction that comes off the King Center refunding 2003B, the general fund debt would actually decrease slightly by $88,000 in 14-15 when compared to 13-14 that we're getting ready to go into. Overall, the cumulative impact is less than $100,000 increase, and that is including the school debt that was recently approved with the VPSA financing. Okay, just to summarize on slide 11, you see where we would be, and if you used all of that in 15, that debt service reserve would be completely exhausted if we stayed on that target. It's not required that we do that, but this would be basically worst case scenario. So the city would need to be in a position to absorb or have additional revenue in its budget and cost reductions to be able to absorb the loss of those revenues in 15. Are there any questions on the debt reserve and this summary that Melissa put together, which she did a fantastic job of doing? I think it clearly paints the picture of where we're at in terms of our debt reserve as you enter this year's budget. No decisions to be made, obviously, now. This has just given us the opportunity to plan, and as we approached it last year, we're trying to do a multi-year plan, and hopefully this accomplished that. It also clearly shows the wise decisions made to refinance the debt and lower those payments so that we're not looking at such a huge increase in debt this year, because the reality of that would be we would have to utilize pretty much all of that debt reserve to just break even in the coming year if we had not refinanced. Any other questions on that? Or Melissa, do you have any comment to add? Okay. Well, the next I'd like to move in, Mr. Vice Mayor and Council, to a summary of where we're at with the general fund, first the general fund, but all of our funds for the fiscal year 13-14. Now, this is not what you would see in terms of a total detailed budget. We have not completed the budget balancing exercise that the finance director and the budget officer, who is myself, will be completing in the coming days. We're still working with that. But what I wanted to do is go ahead and give you an overview of not 30,000 foot high view, but hopefully much lower than that, but a good overview of what we're facing given the leveling exercise we did this year with our debt, given the available reserves and what the impact, and then what's have been requested by the departments as well as all other agencies that receive funding from the city, and sort of give you an update on where we're at. If you'll start on that first cover sheet with the balloons, I'll call them, You see the first thing we start with is the local revenue enhancements, any additional revenue that we can estimate for the coming year, the local taxes, and revenue sharing. The first balloon that I'll point to when you follow the arrows is this proposal at this juncture does not contain any increase in property tax rates. None is being recommended in the proposed budget. None will be recommended at this, based on what I know, unless the city council makes changes that would make that to be reconsidered, but I don't anticipate that. It does include an assumption on my part of level funding for most of the community agencies that receive funding. You heard requests from a number of them for significant increases, but I believe that to be primarily a policy decision that the city council will have to make. So I did not presume, only in the cases of agencies that we have contractual obligations or other obligations have I deviated from that. But in terms of most of your nonprofit organizations, I'll leave that to the city council's judgment when you get into discussing the budget. This budget, as required by state law, does implement the VRS legislation that was begun last year, which on our schedule is phased in. This would be the second of 1% increases to the employees' salaries that would be offset by the employees paying their share into the VRS that was begun last year. I want to remind you that any new employees that have been hired since this legislation also had certain benchmarks set in it. They are already at the 5% rate, but this would affect the vast majority of our employees and continuing to phase in that. Also included is you'll see us address use of debt service reserve funds and how much. This is presented showing that we would stay with what was presented last year, no additional. In terms of personnel, we are forced to deal with and the council knows this from our work sessions, the Affordable Health Care Act will require that part-time employees who are working more than 29 hours will either have to stay under 30 hours or be provided that benefit. And so that is accounted for in the budget in terms of position by position. It does not include any new positions. It's not on here, but we actually are not recommending keeping some positions, a small number of positions, but no new positions are being requested or recommended, except in the area of stormwater management. Their new mandate on that we're required to comply with will require additional staffing in the Community Development Department. This will be done in partnership with Southampton County under our ongoing agreement. If you want to discuss that more, we'll obviously get into it in the budget, but there will be increased revenues related to this. The state has also mandated a new fee schedule for stormwater inspections and so forth and permits. I'm sure we'll spend some time on that when we get into the budget. It does also adjust for grant commitments in public safety and things of that nature. Going forward with the next slide, slide 2, just giving you an overview, we have projected $20 million. This is just the general fund. We'll get to the other funds in a few moments. The general fund, we're projecting $20,389,651 in revenue. Requested from all the departments and agencies is $21,941,662. That gives us a negative variance of expenditures over revenue of $1,551,662. Now, that has certain assumptions. That includes a contingency appropriation of $100,000, which is just a little higher than what we actually have in the current year's budget for emergencies throughout the year. So a little bit of conservatism built into the budget with that appropriation. It includes the full funding of the request from the school division of their FY 2012 carryover, the end of last fiscal year that we discussed when the superintendent presented her budget request at the last meeting. It excludes the request for most of the personnel changes that were made. At this juncture, I'll address those a little later in the presentation. This assumption of this shortage excludes use of reserve funds we just talked about, those debt reserve funds, and it excludes provision for any employee salary increase. It excludes revenue sharing from Isle of Wight County. It eliminates revenue and expenses from the solid waste to the general fund. We'll talk about that a little more. But what this is the start of the budget review process. When I, as a budget officer, received the request, this is where we started with a hole of $1.5 million. Next, we were able to obtain, and I'm very pleased to report this number, it's the first time we've released it, from Isle of Wight revenue sharing based on their finance department's estimates. What we hoped would happen is happening. This is a significant increase from last year's actual revenue sharing allocation. I believe that was $230 some odd $1,000. This is a result of some of the repurposing and other revenues starting to come back. So it's really good news, but we're now going to be at $530,000. Remember, I said we lost about $1.1 million, so slightly less than half of that is expected to come back in this budget year. This does include the scheduled use of debt reserves as scheduled, the $872,000 we went over in the earlier presentation on debt reserve use of those funds. And that's what we agreed on tentatively on the schedule last year. And you see that ups the revenue by $1.4 million. When you add that to it, I'm still out of balance, but we thus far through April 19th, last time this was calculated, with the level funding recommendation on the agency contributions, that reduces their request by $100,000 collectively. I've identified an additional $269,200 already in terms of reductions. I will be finding some more. This reflects some of the salary increase adjustments necessary to address position changes and so forth in the amount of roughly $50,000 from various departments. That leaves us, those are cuts of $319,200 collectively. When you factor that into the balancing equation, you see that the original deficit was $1,500,000, as I said earlier. With revenue adjustments of the additional revenue, the expenditure reductions, that flips the balancing act to where we'd have a revised variance of revenues over expenditures of almost $170,000, which is good news. That's where you obviously want to be. Now I'll go to, on the slide 6, to some of the potential uses of those funds. Again, I'm still going through the exercise. This gives us the opportunity to realistically look at a provision for a salary increase. You see that in the general fund alone, a 1% increase in all the general fund employee salaries cost, you see that at roughly $65,000 in salary and benefits costs that are associated with that. It gives us the opportunity to look at our contingency appropriation. Is $100,000 enough? It finally gives us the opportunity to look at lowering the debt service reserve appropriation, or any combination of these or any other changes that the City Council might desire. For example, if you would desire to give additional money to any of the agencies that I discussed earlier. That concludes the general fund. If there are any questions, I guess we could take those now before I go into the other funds. Otherwise, I'll keep rolling.
One
Yes,
question. Are we going to reach
Any
something?
particular slide?
Well, I guess you could say the options to potential balance revenue in excess of
Okay,
expenditures.
that would be slide 6,
Total
okay.
169.
Yes, sir.
I would like to take some good news back to my constituents. Is there any provisions, are you working anything into your plans that will actually lower any cost to our citizens for anything?
Yes, you'll see that in one of the other funds. when we get to it.
Okay.
Okay?
Very good, thank
Is that enough for now?
My only question.
Now, this does not recommend lowering the tax rate, and that's really the only primary fee that would be impacting the customers in this general fund. This recommends keeping the tax rate we currently have of 90 cents per $100 evaluation. Yes, sir.
My only question I have is, how did you handle the meals tax, sales tax?
We have very conservative estimates of.
So we have lowered them a little bit? Because I'm wondering if we've had
We're
so
being
many people-
conservative in that because we don't obviously know those. In past years, the city frankly has gotten in some trouble with its budgeting exercise by overestimating
Well,
ahead.
what concerns me, if we've had a lot of people from out of town doing work over at IP, et cetera.
Yeah.
And has that caused our increase or not?
No, actually, because of this year's conservative budget, I think we saw most of that impact in the prior year, and you don't see significant increases. When you get the detail, you'll see they're pretty conservative. You want to comment further on that, Melissa?
Yes, you're absolutely right. We did our projections for fiscal year 14. Most of the things were consistent with what we expect to receive this year. I believe there was only one area that we did increase it just a little bit, but most, as Mr. Morris stated, very conservative, no huge spikes. So we just want to make sure that we weren't over.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the general fund? If not, we can come back to it. The enterprise funds are the balance of our other funds. The first one would be the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. Now, just a reminder, last year during the budget process, partly due to the late arrival of the city manager on the scene, we had to jump right into the budget process. We did not have time to accomplish one of the goals that we discussed, and that was, and a recommendation that I felt very strongly about, that to properly account for our solid waste funds, we need to peel that off, make it a separate fund. The council, we discussed that at length during last year's budget cycle. This budget recommends doing just that. All of the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund revenues and expenditures would be accounted for in a separate budget that will give us, run it like a business, if you will, more like a business, in that it will not be, it will be self-sufficient. It will not be subsidized by the general fund, nor would it create reserve funds for the general fund. It'll stand alone, just like the water and sewer fund, just like the electric fund and the airport fund. So this budget, when it's recommended to you and presented in its full detail, will show all expenditures related to that solid waste fund beginning July 1 in its own fund. We do have, and this gets to a question that was asked just a few moments ago by one of the council members, Councilman McLemore. We do acknowledge, as was mentioned earlier in the financial report, that we're having a significant savings thus far this fiscal year. You've received a couple of updates on that. I'm now going to give you an 8-month update on that. This is primarily resulting, not all the efficiencies within the department that are being done, but just the savings on yard waste alone by properly enforcing the rules, and our citizens have cooperated, and we have significantly reduced our tonnage. On the next slide, and then I'll come back to the earlier one, 8, you'll see August, we began this August 1, or in August, and through August through March, you see the total tonnage that was of the prior year, what was sent to SIPSA. And the difference in tonnage is about almost 1,000 tons, 926.92 tons. Is the difference. That has reduced, in relation to that tonnage, our cost savings is about 90% of what we would have been paying to SIPSA for handling that tonnage that was generated previously by the yard waste. And you'll see that the total savings for this 8-month period of this fiscal year is almost $105,000. And obviously it's going to be more before the end of the fiscal year. Going back to slide 8 with that information, the other two things that we're doing with this fund, we started in the current budget year with the budget approved by the council last summer. a reserve appropriation for future capital project replacements. This is things such as garbage trucks. Instead of the city having to come up with it out of its reserves or borrow the money, which was the most recent model that had been followed, and paying it back over several years. This will set aside money to make those purchases when they become necessary. This year, I believe we had $100,000, is that correct, Melissa, that we set aside for that use. And finally, the last bullet, to speak to the question asked earlier, this would give the council the opportunity to consider another rate reduction. Last year, we were able to reduce our rate slightly. This would be able to do another rate reduction in the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. When I present the budget, it will have specifics on that. We're still working through those numbers, but it does give the council the opportunity to lower the solid waste garbage fee that is currently, I believe, $42 and change for a residential customer. But it will give us the opportunity to look at a reduction due at least in part from the savings realized on the solid waste and any other efficiencies that we've done in the department. Next item is the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. One comment, just to not underscore the comment about capital reserve. If we continue that appropriation, those funds would stay with that fund and be available. And if we had to buy a garbage truck, which I believe, Russ, what's the latest price on that? Between $200,000 and $300,000?
They're very close to about
$230,000 is what we're talking about. So in actuality, within another year or so, if we stick with this, we would have sufficient funds to buy our next solid waste collection equipment replacement with cash in that fund and have no impact on the general fund and no impact on rates, causing them to be increased. Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. This fund, of course, has been a separate fund for a long time, many years. We have been working with our engineering associate engineer that works with us doing a rate study. During the budget process, I won't belabor it tonight, you'll see a several-year budget projection. This is what we want to try to use the same model we used on the general fund going forward in the Water and Sewer Fund. We're going to do a rate study. Already had it pretty much wrapped up. They're very close. We'll present the recommendations in that. There'll be some recommended changes in our rate structure. At this point, that's the only comments I'll make tonight. I do not anticipate a rate increase overall for all customer classes, but I will wait and let that fine tune and we'll present that report to you when the engineer's rate study is complete. And you'll of course see the budget proposed. No other major changes in this budget except another leveling effect, similar to what we just talked about with a reserve. One of the big spike items in the utility fund, the Water and Sewer Fund, has been when we've had to paint a tank. We just recently did the one in Pretlow. Russ, help me out, was it $200,000 to $300,000? Four. It was over $300,000 to do that. It's a big hit on a one single budget year. So what we're trying to do, we've been looking at options of doing an effort where our maintenance can be funded annually in a way that we avoid those spikes, because we will have on the horizon, we have additional tank painting needs that are staring us down, and that's going to have an adverse effect on revenues and rates and reserves in this fund if we don't get a handle on it, and you will see the recommendation and report on that impact as well during the budget. Yes, sir.
Is that for interior paint as well as the exterior?
Yes, and some other changes that would improve and help with something you've asked about during work sessions and others have commented on, the quality, preserving and improving the quality of our water and making sure it's as fresh as possible.
Do we have an option of doing them separately, the inside versus the outside, wherein it may cost us $200,000 to do the inside, which would help improve our quality of water, but the outside we don't have to do right now because it's just aesthetics?
Well, not necessarily. If you go too long with it, it can cause problems with the tank that I'm not an expert on, but you'll see the full report. But they take into consideration all maintenance needs, and they have done an inspection.
Who's
of all. We've had a consultant come in and do an inspection of all of the tanks, and they've made proposals. We'll be getting proposals from consultants to do this service that will tell you the condition, and you'll see pictures, if you're interested, the whole works on the condition of some of the tanks. And but your short answer to your question, yes, all of those options will be on the table, but what we're trying to do is figure out a way that we can fund this annually and not have those hundreds of thousands of dollar spikes and valleys between major tank improvement needs, whether it be inside or outside or both. And one other part of this is we're also aggressively looking at additional revenue that could help in this fund by bringing in communication antennas, third-party antennas. That'll be part of the evaluation, where we could get revenue from people accessing our tanks, putting their equipment there for cell phone and other uses that will enhance revenue for the city. Any question on the water and sewer? Okay, Airport Enterprise Fund, no significant changes in this fund. We have some ongoing capital projects, but there are no significant changes. In the electric fund, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but we've been anticipating this all year. We've informed the council, and I've advised the citizen groups that we've talked to that each year we're subject to changes in the fuel factor charge that is a pass-through charge that goes on to our bills. We have just received in the last week, Mark, is that right?
Yes, sir.
In the last week, we've received what's gone into effect already, April 1, and will be reflected on the May bills. We'll go over that in just a moment. Then we'll get into reviewing. If Mark could come up, I'd like him to comment specifically on the fuel adjustment so that, and I believe, do we have that handout? Well, anyway, we'll get you a copy of that letter, but basically, I'll let Mark hit the highlights of what the impact of this year's fuel adjustment is and so forth.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The only thing I really prepared for comparison purposes is the residential customer. That seems to be, well, that's the majority of customers that we have. With the increase in the fuel charge, we did a calculation using the average kilowatt hour usage of 1,000 kilowatt hours a month for the average user. It would be a 2.29% increase to that total monthly bill, which amounts to $2.46. That's just the increase to the fuel charge. And that is done on a weighted average, because if you recall, a residential customer, we have June through September is a little higher rate than we have for the winter months of October to May. But the weighted average, it comes out to the 2.29% increase.
And just to remind the council, this is a direct pass-through, as I understand it. It doesn't require any council action. That is the way our billing and collection process was set up when we entered into our contractual arrangement.
And I would add, I guess at this juncture, this adjustment of the fuel charge is nothing new. It's not new with the new power contract effective January 1st, 2011. I've been in the with the VMEA contract for 14 years now, and it has been a factor in our charges. And as I understand, City of Franklin has always passed it through, just as the rest of our total of our 7 members do the same. And even our competitors have a fuel adjustment charge on their bill.
And And if I remember correctly, it doesn't sound like much consolation, but last year we had a significant reduction in our rate adjustment. So this is not always an up. This year it is, but we're still below where we were, I believe, last March before the reduction. So we don't know what this holds for future years. We don't know each year until mid to early April before we know this number. But I did want to, in the effort to full disclosure, that is, we've adjusting our budget proposals from the department to reflect the impact of that change that went into effect this month.
Is that do we get another change in October, or is it once a year?
That is once, normally, typically that's once a year. Only once in the last 14 years was there an adjustment, I believe, in October or November, just because there seemed to be a very large increase. Instead of hitting us all at once in April of the next year, we decided to increase it once part of the way into the middle of the fiscal year instead of waiting till the new fiscal year. But typically it's every April.
It's only once a year.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Vice Mayor, can I say something? I just want to say that I understand that if we get an increase, then we pass that on. I understand that. But that's why I am so stringent about areas where it isn't a must, where we do have an option. And if we can find ways to reduce what I think we're getting complaints from our citizens on utility bills. I've been saying, now I don't discredit the fact that there may be some of the issues that were brought up by the citizen tonight as far as the arcing or meters and things like that. I'm not going to disregard that. There may be validity in it, or maybe it's not. But there is a fact that there are some things we cannot control. We can't control Dominion raising their utility rates on us, which we have to pass on. And the bottom line is the citizens are going to get another utility increase. They won't understand probably, but the fact is that Dominion is going to raise the rates on us, so we will have to pass that on. And I would defend that. But looking at that utility bill that they see, that's why I think that it's advantageous for us to look at where we can make adjustments and make those adjustments. Because we can't affect Dominion. We can't affect what Dominion is charging us. But we can, if the cost of the city, if we can lower something like a sewage rate or a water rate or a trash rate, I think it's our almost duty to offer that relief to the citizens, because we can't help it when Dominion raises the rates on us. And that's what I'd just like to make the point, because I asked you, was anything going to be lower? And you said, yeah, it's a possibility you'll bring it to council.
No, it will be a recommendation to reduce the solid waste.
Okay, this is my concern, because I didn't hear that it will be your recommendation to lower these rates.
Yes.
And I want to see where, we can set aside money for, I understand we might need trash trucks, or we might need to paint a tower. But right now, our citizens are struggling. So we can't do anything about this new rate increase of electricity that they're going to get ready to get.
Yeah,
But we can do something about these other things.
Ms. McMorro, we'll be talking about this in depth during the budget. I think
Okay.
right now they're just giving us an overview of what they're thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and going along that, you're exactly right, and your comments are right on with the Virginia Dominion. They have proposed, and I've mentioned this for several months now during these meetings with the citizens and others, that Dominion has proposed a 3.6% increase in the wholesale power rate that's charged of the city effective July 1. Barring any change of heart, you see what the estimated impact of both of these things, the fuel adjustment and the Dominion wholesale power rate change, would for a 1,000 kilowatt hour user mean $5.78 per month in increased cost. And obviously that is a factor that I'm looking at when I look at any ways we can reduce other costs, because the citizens look at it all as being fees, and so we certainly, you know, taking that in consideration in the recommendation I'll make on the solid waste. Okay, the last, yes, sir.
Question, I go into a whole lot of detail.
All right. On the electric?
Yeah. Dominion Resources, I mean, we have a contract, they're following a contract, I'm sure. When we had all these questions about the electric usage, one of the things was where are we in comparison to Dominion Resources? And we're right at them, maybe a little bit low, not much.
We're $2 per thousand more expensive than Dominion is right now.
Just on the base rate.
Right.
Oh, wait. I thought we've been saying to people we were lower than Dominion.
No, we've been putting it, it's been in the media, we put out the latest, this is done by the Attorney General's office, and they did a chart of it, and we're within $2 of Dominion currently. You know, of course, as they change rates and as we change rates, that flips back and forth, because last year we were lower than them. The prior year we were lower, but this current year, based on January 1, we're within $2, but we're slightly higher based on the way the Attorney General calculates it and publishes it. We're about $9 less than our other neighbor, the community cooperative that serves parts of the county outside the city. But, and there are other factors. Certain areas of the state have other, I've forgotten what they're called. Benny, this may be where you're going. There's certain add-ons and fees and things.
Riders.
Yeah, riders, I believe is the proper term, that may change that for individual customers across Dominion's service area, but that's the publication. We didn't do it. That's what the Attorney General came up with and shows where we factor in.
But doesn't our rate kind of have peaks and valleys and Dominion's is level?
Theirs is flat, yes.
That's what I'm saying. Theirs is level and we have peaks and valleys, so.
Yeah.
And, well, part of that is because their rates are set through the State Corporation Commission approval.
Correct, but I guess what I'm saying is we get into the valleys, we may be a little bit lower than them.
Right, 2 years ago, the City of Franklin rate, even with an increase, was less than Dominion's. And then through negotiations with FERC and the State Corporation Commission, they were, Dominion was required to do a rate reduction because they over collected in some things. And as I understand, they're working on a new rider for their next fiscal year, which will show an increase. I just not privy to that.
Which may flip it back the other way. We don't know, but it changes every year based on if rates change.
Well, I think that is, when we are over, it is in direct defiance of the purpose of us having our own utility company in the first place.
Well,
we were supposed to be having our own utility company so that we could purchase from VMAC at a wholesale price and pass the savings on to our citizens.
and we do that, and as you know, the city transfers $1.4 million, which benefits all our tax-paying citizens by lowering the tax burden.
I understand. Yeah. I understand.
And that's factored into those rates, so, you know.
The people who benefit from that mostly are the people who have the very expensive
No, every taxpayer in the city.
Every taxpayer benefits, but nevertheless, the ones who appreciate the most benefit from that is the people who have the very expensive homes. Because I would just assume, because I don't have a very expensive home, I might assume that I would rather pay 5 cents more on my taxes, property taxes per 100, than to pay constantly high or fluctuating light bills because we have to go up and down. Again, to just clarify, the purpose of having our own utility company was to present a savings to the citizens that would always be beneath what they could get electricity from if they purchased it from Dominion Power.
And we very may well be back in that come January 1 of next year, whether we do anything different or not. But your point's well taken, and that's certainly a discussion the City Council can have during the budget cycle, whether you want to change any of those dynamics.
Did we answer your question?
Okay. Yeah, I was waiting, I was still waiting on this.
Good point. Yeah, good point Mark just made too. our sharp attorney just pointed it out to me. Let's don't discount that Dominion was found to be overcharging in their rate, and they are regulated by the state, and that's why they had to lower it. So that's probably not a long-term fix.
Correct.
That's a temporary situation that's got a limited time value, if you will. And so as soon as I'm not going to speculate on what they'll do, but as soon as their mandated reduction expires, I would think they will adjust accordingly. So.
And to make up that $1.4 million, you're looking at approximately a 24-cent increase in real estate taxes.
Exactly. Just in raw numbers, unless you had taxable value of a new utility that took back a major portion of that, which nobody knows what that would be, you would be looking at a net loss of significant proportions on the tax rate.
Well, I understand exactly what you're saying, but I'm concerned with these people making it from month to month, and with them not being able to, you see how the citizens, particularly the non-affluent citizens, are concerned about these utility bills, which I have a very difficult time defending that we are reasonable compared to Dominion, when it's obvious during the peaks we are paying less than Dominion. So what do I tell the citizen who says it'd be cheaper if we didn't have to buy electricity from Franklin? I have to go back to the taxes. Well, because we buy it, it helps us keep our taxes low.
No, I think, Mr. McLemore, what was said is that in the long-term scheme of things, we are lower than Dominion. You happen to be talking about a small period of time where Dominion was forced to lower their rates, therefore we are higher. I believe that's what they've been saying.
If you look at it over the long haul, the other thing is that, just to remind you, the City Council previously set a policy to reduce the transfer, and it went down, I don't remember how high it was, but I think we reduced it by $750,000 over a 5-year period, with the math's right, by about $150 a year. So that has greatly reduced in recent times. That just finished, I think last year was the last year of that reduction. And this is the first year that we've had it flat under the budget proposal that you'll be getting. But that's subject to further review by the council to make sure it's balanced. And I think that was the reason it was lowered, is to try to keep balance. And that's a budget exercise that each year the city council has to take into consideration. And that's a policy decision that I won't make, you will.
Exactly.
Okay.
Are there any more questions?
If not, the last item is the school system budget. You heard the superintendent's recommended budget presented. It has not been adopted by the school board. I anticipate that within the next few weeks. They will adopt a budget proposal. Based on what they have submitted, you see on bullet 14, this particular points, the carryover I mentioned earlier, that is included in the proposed budget. It includes the projected increase in state funding that they're scheduled to receive, and you see the amount of change in the school system's budget would be an increase of $886,793 for coming year. The superintendent made a comment that they were not asking for any increase above the carryover from local funding, and this proposed budget that you'll receive when complete will follow that recommendation. Okay, one footnote, just if you're interested, we had in there what the general fund cost approximated would be. If you're curious in what the rest of the funds, it'd be an additional $26,000 and change to do per 1% of salary increase if one is considered. I will be addressing that in the budget proposal, what I'm recommending. But I just wanted you to have a feel tonight on where I'm at with the budget preparation. And we're going to put in a lot more hours, and we'll be coming to you real soon with the recommendation. And then, of course, set up budget work sessions with the council to review it. And the goal being to, after we meet all the requirements of public hearing and other things, and input from all the different folks involved, adoption of a budget sometime before, hopefully early June at the latest, we would finish that process a little earlier than we did last year when we pushed up at the end of June.
Can I interrupt again?
Yes, sir.
I didn't hear the number of what the salary increase does.
65,000, I believe it was on one of the
Well,
slides.
the very beginning.
Not the tax rate, what's the salary increase?
That is 1% would be 65,000 on the general fund. Is that what you're asking?
And that's the tax, and that 1 penny gets 65
No,
cents.
no, that's less than 60,000. 1% salary increase for the general fund only. The other funds is about another 26.5.
That was the number of
Yeah, so it'd be roughly $88,000 to $89,000 on all funds to accomplish 1%.
Right. Number was very similar.
Okay?
Very good.
That's all in terms of manager's report that I have tonight, Mr. Mayor,
All right,
Vice
thank you
Mayor.
very much. Next is the council and staff reports on boards and commissions.
The only report that I have is we were scheduled, just for, make sure everybody who's on the committee knows, we were scheduled to have a Franklin's President meeting tomorrow night, but due to folks being out of town, we have delayed this one. We're going to meet in May instead.
Very good.
We also had an incubator board meeting on Wednesday, but I don't have a report yet.
All right. Was there a SIPSA meeting that needs to be reported on?
SIPSA meeting is Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay, thank you. Was there, Mr. Martin, any other meetings that you needed to respond to?
I believe we reported on the Western Tidewater Jail at the last meeting.
Well, we did, except we had another meeting.
Yeah, we did receive the budget proposal from Western Tidewater Jail. I didn't include a bullet on that, but good news this year, they're not asking for any increase in funding, so.
Correct, it's level.
Yep, level funding.
HRPDC, also, we talked about the budget, and that's going to be level funding this year. They've done some major cuts over there. We also had a joint meeting that Mr. Martin and myself went to. We're still looking at items that we can do jointly with Southampton County. One of the things that we're needing to take part in is the jailhouse security, which I think everybody saw in the paper. We are a percentage owner in that, and I think it works out to be about 20% of the cost. Isn't that right, Mr.
I
Martin?
think it was 24.
24%, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Would be our share of the cost, and they're
But it's
looking at financing that over, I believe, 10 years, so
Right.
there's a reason it's that low.
Right, so it'd be very minimal amount of money, but it's to make the jail, the courthouse over there a lot more secure. So those are the three that I went to. Senior Services I have this coming Thursday. On Saturday, I had the honor of giving the greetings to at the scholarship banquet for Franklin Southampton Retired Teachers Association, and it was held in the Sportsman's Club. We had a couple other council members there visiting as well, Ms. Murphy and Ms. Mary Hilliard. It was a really fine affair. I will say that the lady who won the honoree, Ms. Miller, Crystal Miller, folks need to meet her. She gives exactly what it is to be a volunteer, and she spends a lot of her time volunteering, and that's why she was recognized. And I thank all the folks of that group for allowing me to come and speak to them. And Ms. Hilliard, do you have anything to add, or?
No, I think you covered everything, Vice Mayor.
Ms. Murphy?
Thank you.
The only thing I like to say, that they stated, I think they stated that they did not have any students last year to get the award, and I'm just hoping that they will have one from Southampton and one from Franklin this year.
Right. They give a scholarship to
Scholarship.
those folks that would like to go into teaching as a career. And, but it's a very fine group of folks, and I was pleased to be able to do that for the city. There being no other, whoops, I'm sorry.
It's not really a board or commission, but would like to recognize Tidewater News for their honor in what is the top newspaper in the state. We always like to look for good things that occur, so when that happens to our newspaper, we want to make sure we let them know.
It was very good. Also, those that are not busy tomorrow night at Mr. Bird's 7 o'clock at the high school, where? Charles Street Gym, excuse me, to say goodbye to the, for a short term, to the robotics They're going out to St. Louis for their competition, and I'd like to have a lot of folks out there to wish them well.
Okay.
Is there any other statements, boards or commissions, or in general? If not, can I have a motion to go into closed session?
I move that the Franklin City Council meet in closed session to consider appointments to boards and commissions pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor signify by saying aye, nay, the other response.
Aye.
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 So moved, and we're now in closed session.